Most people don't become bitter all at once. They don't wake up one morning and decide, I'm going to become resentful, cynical, angry, and hard to live with. It happens slowly. Someone hurts you. Life disappoints you. You work hard but you don't get rewarded. You try to do the right thing and nobody notices. You look around and think, why them and not me? And if you're not careful, that pain starts becoming a story. Not just something unfair happened to me, but life is unfair. People can't be trusted. No one cares. What's the point? I deserve more than this. That is where resentment begins. And resentment is dangerous because it feels justified. The truth is, resentment usually begins with real pain. Resentment is rarely imaginary. Most resentful people aren't angry for no reason. Often, something genuinely unfair occurred. Maybe they were betrayed. Maybe they were overlooked. Maybe they grew up without the love and guidance they needed. Maybe they sacrificed for others and nobody appreciated it. Or maybe life simply didn't turn out the way they had hoped. So the first mistake is pretending resentment is always irrational. It isn't. Sometimes the wound is real, but the danger is this. A wound explains your pain. It does not justify letting that pain rule your life. Resentment turns suffering into your identity. There's a difference between saying, I was hurt, and saying, I am the person who was hurt. The first one describes an experience. The second one becomes an identity. Once resentment becomes part of your identity, you start protecting it. You look for evidence that confirms it. You remember every slight. You replay every insult. You compare your life to everyone else's highlight reel, and you start interpreting neutral things as personal attacks. And eventually, resentment becomes a sort of dark comfort. Because if everything is someone else's fault, then you don't have to change. And that's the trap. Resentment offers relief from responsibility, but the cost is your future. Resentment makes you morally lazy, and that is one of the hardest truths. Resentment can make you feel morally superior. You think, I'm angry because I care. I'm bitter because I've been treated unfairly. I'm harsh because people deserve it. But over time, resentment gives you permission to become the very thing you hate. You hate selfishness, but you become self-absorbed. You hate cruelty, but you become cruel with your words. You hate being judged, but you're quick to judge everyone else. You hate being ignored, but you ignore the needs of others around you. Resentment doesn't just make you unhappy. It deforms your character. But it gets worse, because resentment destroys gratitude. Gratitude and resentment cannot occupy the same space for long. Resentment says, look at what I don't have. Gratitude says, look at what I've been given. Resentment gradually narrows your vision until all you see is the missing piece. You can have a family, a job, food, shelter, health, opportunity, freedom, and still feel poor if your mind is fixed on the one thing you believe you were denied. That doesn't mean your pain isn't real. It means pain shouldn't be allowed to erase everything that's good. A resentful person can stand right in the middle of blessing and feel like they've been robbed. Resentment also poisons relationships because resentment never stays contained. You may think that you're only angry at one person, one event, one injustice, but eventually it leaks. It comes out as sarcasm, distance, suspicion, criticism, or contempt. And the people closest to you end up paying for wounds they didn't even cause. Your spouse gets the sharp edge, your kids get impatience, your friends get the cynicism, your co-workers get the bitterness. And the real tragedy is resentment often pushes away the very few people who actually would have stuck by you. Often resentment keeps you chained to the past. You see, people often think forgiveness is about letting the other person off the hook. But in many ways, forgiveness is about refusing to stay chained to the past. Resentment says, I'm going to keep this wound open until the world pays me back. But the world may never pay you back. The apology may never come. The recognition may never come. the justice may never feel complete. The person who hurt you may not even understand that they did. So the question becomes, are you willing to sacrifice the rest of your life waiting for a debt that may never be paid? Because that's what resentment asks of you. It asks you to keep bleeding until someone else notices. So what's the cure? It begins with honesty. You cannot defeat resentment by pretending you're fine. You have to be honest. So ask yourself, what am I angry about? What do I believe I was owed? Who do I secretly blame? Where have I allowed bitterness to become part of my personality? What responsibility am I avoiding because resentment gives me an excuse? That last question matters because resentment often hides in places where we refuse to take responsibility. Not always, but often. And the question is not, was it fair? Because it probably wasn't. But the question is, what can I still do with what I have? That's where freedom begins. Once again, responsibility is the way out. Responsibility does not mean pretending the pain didn't happen. It means deciding that your future is not going to be ruled by it. You may not be responsible for the wound, but you are definitely responsible for what that wound becomes. Does it become wisdom or bitterness? Does it make you more compassionate or more cynical? Does it make you stronger, or does it become the excuse to stop you from growing? That choice isn't easy, but it's your choice. And that's the good news. Because if resentment is partly maintained by the story you keep telling yourself, then healing begins when you tell the truth more fully. Not just, I was hurt, but I was hurt and I still have a life to build. So here's some practical steps. Step 1. Name it. Say it plainly. I am resentful. Not angry, not frustrated, not annoyed. Resentful. Because that honesty removes some of its power. Step 2 is stop feeding it. Stop replaying the same argument over and over again in your head. Stop stalking the lives of the people that you envy. Stop rehearsing imaginary confrontations. And stop consuming content that keeps you bitter. Whatever you feed grows. Step number 3, find one responsibility that you've abandoned. Resentment often causes neglect. Maybe you've stopped caring for your health. Maybe you've stopped being kind at home. Maybe you've stopped trying hard at work. Maybe you've stopped praying. Maybe you've stopped building anything meaningful. Pick one thing and take it back. Step 4 is one I am passionate about. Practice gratitude aggressively. Not vaguely, specifically. Write down everything in your life that is still good. Who still loves you? What you have. What opportunities are still open. What you can still do today. Gratitude is not weakness. Gratitude is a rebellion against bitterness. Step 5 is super important. Forgive where you can. Forgiveness does not always mean reconciliation. It definitely doesn't mean trusting someone who's unsafe. It does not mean denying evil or injustice. It means refusing to let the offense own your soul. Resentment feels powerful, but it makes you weak. It feels like justice, but often becomes self-destruction. It feels like clarity, but it distorts your vision. It tells you that you're protecting yourself while quietly building a prison around your life. And probably the most dangerous thing about resentment is that it can feel deserved, but a poison doesn't become harmless just because you had a reason to drink it. So tell the truth. Name the wound. Face the pain. Take responsibility for what comes next. Choose gratitude where you can. Forgive what you are able to forgive. And refuse to let bitterness become your identity. Because your past may explain you, but it does not need to own you. And once resentment loses its grip, you begin to see one of the most important truths in life. You cannot control everything that happens to you, but you can choose what kind of person you become because of it.